She wasn't just a goddess of love or magic. Isis was the invisible force shaping Egypt's destiny. While kings wore the crowns and priests performed the rituals, it was Isis who held the deeper power. Behind every moment of balance, every triumph over chaos, every sacred rite that echoed through the temples, her presence was there, steady and unseen. She was the healer who restored life to the broken, the protector of sacred lineage, the silent strategist moving the pieces of fate behind the veil. Her hands never clutched a scepter, yet her will influenced kings and gods alike. She walked through myth and history as a mother, a queen, a magician, and a guide, always leading Egypt from behind the scenes. So the question must be asked, was Isis the true power behind Egypt's greatness? And if so, how deep did her influence go? Isis in the myth of Osiris. The myth of Osiris is one of the most powerful and enduring stories of ancient Egypt, and at its heart stands Isis. Osiris, the just and wise ruler, is betrayed by his jealous brother Set, who murders him and scatters his body across the land. Egypt is thrown into darkness. Chaos begins to rise. But Isis does not yield. Driven by love and divine purpose, she searches every corner of the earth, gathering the pieces of Osiris's body, refusing to let death have the final word. Through sacred rites, invocations, and her unmatched knowledge of divine magic, Isis restores him, not as he was, but as something greater. Osiris is resurrected, becoming the Lord of the afterlife, the eternal judge of souls. It was not a god who brought him back. It was a goddess. Isis initiated the very first resurrection myth in recorded history. She gave life where there was none. She defied death, not with brute strength, but with sacred power and unwavering devotion. Then, as mother of Horus, Isis became the guardian of the next generation. She protected her son from the wrath of Set, raising him in secret, shaping him to reclaim his rightful place on the throne. This myth was more than a story. It became the spiritual backbone of Egypt. It taught that love could conquer death, that order could rise from chaos, and that divine feminine power was not only sacred, it was essential. Through Isis, Egypt saw that behind every restoration, behind every resurrection, there was a force that never gave up, a force that could heal the broken and guide the fallen back to life. That force was her. Behind the throne, Isis and Pharaoh. In ancient Egypt, the pharaoh was more than just a king. He was the living embodiment of Horus, the falcon god, son of Isis. Every ruler who sat on the throne of Egypt was, in spirit, continuing the divine line that Isis herself had preserved and protected. By aligning themselves with Horus, the pharaohs inherited not only his royal power, but also the sacred lineage that began with Isis. She was seen as the divine mother of kings, the source of legitimacy, and the guardian of the throne. Without her blessing, symbolic or spiritual, a king's claim to power was incomplete. In countless temple reliefs and inscriptions, Isis is shown standing behind the pharaoh, her hand extended in protection, or her arms encircling him in a divine embrace. She offers the Ankh, the breath of life, or shields him with her wings. These images weren't decorative, they were declarations. They told the people and the gods that this ruler was sanctioned, guarded, and guided by the mother of the divine bloodline. Her presence reinforced the sacred nature of kingship. Pharaohs ruled by Ma'at, truth and order, and Isis was its eternal protector. Her spiritual support wasn't a mythic detail, it was essential. In the temple rituals and coronation ceremonies, her name and energy were invoked to ensure balance between heaven and earth, between the mortal and divine. Even in her silence, Isis was power. While she didn't sit on the throne, she stood behind it, within it, around it, shaping the legacy of kings from the shadows. Her divine motherhood made the crown more than gold. It made it sacred. The magical power of Isis. Isis was not only a goddess of love and motherhood, she was known across Egypt as Weret Hakau, great of magic. Her power was legendary, her knowledge feared even by the gods. She was a healer who could mend wounds no mortal could touch. She could restore life, cure the sick, and ward off evil with incantations and sacred gestures. Her magic wasn't illusion, it was divine command over the forces of nature and spirit. She didn't ask the gods to act, she acted with their authority. One of the oldest and most powerful myths tells how Isis tricked the sun god Ra himself to learn his secret name, the source of his divine power. Using wisdom and subtlety, she created a magical serpent that bit Ra. In agony, he could not heal himself. No other god could help him. But Isis could, and she did, under one condition: that he reveal to her his true name. When he did, she gained access to the deepest mysteries of divine speech, creation, and command. Her magic came from knowledge, ancient, hidden, sacred knowledge tied to the laws of the cosmos. This wasn't sorcery, it was the language of the gods. Every word she spoke, every rite she performed, was in alignment with Ma'at, with the order of the universe. Isis wielded this power not for glory, but for protection, for healing, for justice, and for the preservation of life. She embodied the balance between power and compassion, between wisdom and action, and that's what made her unstoppable. Guardian of Ma'at. In the heart of ancient Egyptian belief stood Ma'at, the principle of balance, harmony, justice, and divine order. Every gum, every ritual, every breath of the kingdom was meant to uphold Ma'at. And among all the deities, Isis stood as one of its fiercest guardians. Her every action, restoring Osiris, protecting Horus, resisting Set, was not just about family or loyalty, it was about keeping the cosmic scales in balance. When chaos rose, Isis answered not with force, but with sacred intention and precise action. She didn't just respond to disorder, she restored the original pattern of the universe. Her power was often silent, invisible to the eye, yet it was the kind that held the cosmos together. While others sought thrones, armies, or temples, Isis sought truth. She acted when others faltered. She remembered when others forgot. She carried the essence of Ma'at in her voice, her decisions, her unwavering will. Without Isis, the resurrection of Osiris would not have been possible. The ascension of Horus would have failed. The continuity of divine order would have shattered. She didn't rule by might. She ruled by keeping the world from falling apart. And that kind of power, the power to preserve what is sacred when everything around you breaks, is the highest form of divine strength. That is why Isis wasn't just a goddess. She was balance incarnate, influence across empires. The power of Isis did not end at Egypt's borders. Her presence expanded across continents, cultures, and centuries, transforming her from an Egyptian goddess into a universal symbol of healing, protection, and sacred mystery. By the time of the Greek and Roman empires, the worship of Isis had become one of the most widespread and enduring religious movements of the ancient world. Her temples appeared in Athens, Rome, Pompeii, and far beyond. Sailors invoked her for safe passage. Women prayed to her for fertility and strength. Philosophers and mystics saw her as the embodiment of divine wisdom. Her cult merged seamlessly into the mystery religions, spiritual schools that offered inner transformation and secret rites to initiates. Within these movements, Isis was no longer seen solely as Osiris's consort or Horus's mother. She became the soul of the cosmos itself, a divine mother, a cosmic queen, a revealer of sacred knowledge. Inscriptions from later periods don't just honor her, they revere her as she who is all. Her image was adopted, her symbols preserved, and her teachings adapted into new spiritual systems. Even long after Egyptian temples were abandoned, Isis endured. While many gods faded into obscurity as empires rose and fell, Isis remained. Her influence outlasted even Osiris and Horus, not because she was more powerful, and perhaps that's why her voice still echoes, because Isis became something more than myth. She became eternal, the hidden feminine force. Isis was the embodiment of divine feminine power, not loud or forceful, but deeply intuitive, healing, and wise. She didn't dominate through conquest or command. She led through presence, through insight, through her ability to see what others could not and act in perfect harmony with the unseen forces of life. In a world where the spotlight often fell on kings, warriors, and male gods, Isis remained mostly in the shadows. But her influence was everywhere. She guided Osiris through resurrection, protected and prepared Horus to reclaim the throne, and shielded Egypt's spiritual foundation in its most fragile moments. Isis was the silent architect of order. She allowed others to rise, not because she lacked power, but because her power was in empowering. Her leadership was generative, creating space for healing, justice, and transformation. She was the force behind rebirth, the mind behind divine law, and the heart behind the throne. Where others ruled with might, Isis ruled through meaning. Her strength lay in her stillness, in her strategy, in her unshakable faith in the sacred. She was not just a goddess, she was the divine feminine made manifest, the eternal balance to divine masculine power. Without her, Egypt's destiny would have faltered, because in truth, Isis never needed to be seen to be obeyed. Her presence alone was enough. Isis is far more than a mythological figure etched into stone or whispered through legend. She is the embodiment of hidden strength, of spiritual leadership, of the power that flows not from domination, but from deep wisdom, vision, and sacred intention. While others claimed power through titles and crowns, Isis shaped Egypt through her quiet guidance, her unwavering love, and her relentless protection of what was true and eternal. Her legacy didn't rely on force, it rested on presence. And in doing so, she became a model for what true leadership looks like, not controlling others, but empowering them to rise. She restored Osiris. She raised Horus. She preserved Ma'at. And through all of it, she shaped the soul of a civilization that lasted thousands of years. Perhaps Isis was never meant to rule with a crown, but to guide the crown from within. And in doing so, she proved that the most lasting power is the one that doesn't seek credit. It simply holds the world together. In our next video, we explore the secret teachings and magical knowledge Isis guarded. Wisdom passed down through temple initiations, hidden texts, and perhaps still waiting to be rediscovered today. The mystery continues.